Go ahead and hit record. So welcome to the first study session that we're going to do over the 6 units. I apologize. When I started this, I did not, it had 3 units. And thanks to a couple of you instructors out there who are really good at diligent about getting all your work done, all of a sudden I got a heads up that there was a lot more happened in there after we purchased the access to the curriculum than when they originally put it out. So thank you for sticking with me on that. I was going to start with a poll. If I can get it to launch. There we go. Right. If you would go ahead and answer those couple questions for me. Right. I hate sharing my screen and this because then I don't see you guys all seen the poll results? Um, I find that interesting. In the past, I think more, as I will say, as a person who proctors the final GED test, I will say more people come out of it talking about their luck than they do their effort. Jennifer and Jeremy, I know you guys proctor. What do you? I mean, some talk about how hard they studied, but the majority of them talk about how it was their luck.
I think when they come back into the classroom, if they typically say it was their effort.
Ah. So they tell their teacher it's the effort.
I'm having a hard time answering because most of the time what I see is their enthusiasm over having passed, and I'm not sure what they attributed that to,
Yeah,
if
relief.
that makes sense.
There's a lot of relief, a lot of, okay, I didn't think, they didn't have the as much confidence as they came out as when they passed. So their confidence level wasn't as high as what they thought it would end up as, if that makes sense.
The last couple I've had in testing who passed, both talked about, they both said to me, I studied so hard, or I worked so hard. So I think it depends on the person maybe too.
I think so too, because I've definitely heard that too, Becky, that I'm so glad that I passed. I worked so hard at this.
Okay. So the whole first unit's emphasis was on making sure and this is where I got extremely stuck during my initial conversations. And I think I even might have mentioned to a couple staff people. Did anyone else struggle with stable being uncontrollable versus unstable being controllable? And that vocabulary? Was I the only one that struggled with that?
Let me alleviate your fear. I got stuck there. Just saying. And I was also one that went through the quiz and then I went, oh, hold it. I switched this around, then I had to go back and rewatch because I had it kind of switched in my head.
I ended up, my notes, I ended up taking and highlighting it in yellow, making it really big because I knew I kept screwing it up. So I did have to go back to when they were doing those pop-up quizzes. Anyone else have trouble with that vocabulary?
Everybody's notes are saying yes, very confusing. And Amy, I think, sums it up. The terminology is not intuitive.
Oh, I like it. Oh, good. Now I don't feel bad.
Silka says, why? That's why I had to make my groupings of notes, because it was like, okay, so stable, uncontrollable. Yeah. Yeah.
Can anyone explain to me why?
Well,
I'm
I
hoping
think
that we get.
For
I
me,
think we
oh, go
we
ahead.
attribute the word stable and these words stable and unstable. They come with a certain connotation in colloquial use, and usually unstable is seen as kind of an undesirable state to be in. Um,
Was, oh, sorry, Jeremy.
Go ahead, Nikita.
Oh, I was just gonna say, was like, is fixed mindset like copyrighted or something that we have a phrase for it.
I
That's
wondered
better.
that too, because that's kind of how I finally managed to make sense of it is like, okay, so stable is fixed mindset, which means you think that things are out of your control. And yeah,
I
I
I
wondered too.
just I just forgot all about the stable and unstable, and I was like, oh, it's stable, static, it's not going to change, or like I can't change it. So then so
Oh,
I agreed that the terminology was confusing, but I just made new terminology that almost matched so that I could remember.
I like it. Well, I'm glad we were in that together. So they also talked about the three different theories on increasing motivation, and the attribution theory, self-efficacy, and self-determination theory. Um, Before we go into the groups, I guess somebody want to give everybody an explanation on how you remember what those different theories are? Or give me an example?
I think attribution theory is what we hear so often in math, and our math teachers can probably speak to this too. I'm just not good at math. I just don't know how, I'm just not good at this. I just can't do this. I can't learn this. Um, your failure is permanent and out of your control.
I'm not a
I
math person.
Yeah.
I think about that a lot, that attribution theory. Like when I do an intake, I'll talk about where their skills are, something like that. And yeah, I do hear I'm not good at math, I'm not good at reading, and it's it's talked about in that language, no matter what the subject is. I think that comes up over and over again when we intake a student and we have those conversations.
Or, of course you're good in science, you're a male. Or of course you're good in computers, you're a whatever, fill in the blank. Because yes, so the attributing it to something outside of their control. How about the self-efficacy?
This is Jennifer. My sister went to college to get her doctorate in educational psychology. And this was huge in her program all the way through. Was self-efficacy was one of the main drivers that they just was like a staple all the way through that education for success in education was the way the person viewed themselves and their ability to succeed in something. So that one really resonated with me just because I've heard about it for the last 25 years every time we talk about education together.
Self-efficacy really brought me back to thinking about cognitive load, depth of knowledge, Bloom's taxonomy, and really just building the skills. That's how I'm kind of remembering it, right? Because we want them to be successful, have those small successes to build on. And so that's kind of how I even think about when I do my ESL class. And if I'm having struggles, oh, was I making the steps, helping them step, or were we skipping steps?
I think we hear it all the time. Well, they'll just have the wrong mind frame to even think that they can learn. And if they reframe how they think, they do so much better.
Steph, I had trouble hearing you there at the end.
Okay, is this better?
No, not really.
I'll
So
work on it. Go ahead.
That's better.
you're good.
Huh. That's really bizarre. I didn't do anything different. Nothing.
Just wiggled right, apparently. I was looking for, oh, Megan's on. I would think, and this is a stereotype because I've never worked in a prison, self-efficacy might be one that you get to hear a lot about in DOC. Am I right there?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I feel like they do. I feel like they kind of start off a lot of times with telling us that they've been on an IEP to kind of manage our expectations about what they'll be able to do. And then they want to attribute a lot of their things to, I mean, just the same things that you're talking about. But and I feel like this is the sort of thing that we talk about all the time in class. I don't necessarily say that it's self-efficacy, but we always like point out, especially in math class, like, golly, this is getting easier for you, isn't it? You've been really coming to class a lot. You've been trying really hard, and I can see you're understanding a lot better. So, I mean, yeah, and we kind of already knew about this problem, and I'm not sure I was using the terminology, but to get ahead of that, I feel like we've been doing that for a long time, though, because yeah, they want to say that it's something else outside of their control, and that they can't do anything to affect it, just like everybody else.
Well, and I think it goes back to direct and explicit instruction again, too. You know, if you're doing that scaffolded instruction and that scaffolded support, giving them the small victories and then gradually removing yourself from it so that they see that they're the ones doing the work. So the stakes are lower when you're supporting at the beginning, to help them feel more comfortable.
The key thing that keeps coming to mind is, I know many of us historically have been in education for, I don't know, since we were born. And it's like, yeah, we know this, and we do. I don't know that we tell our younger or less experienced, I don't know if we do a good job mentoring that with our less experienced teachers, just based on some observations I've seen. Okay, what about self-determination theory? I think sometimes you can just, well, of course you're going to be, it's already predetermined. Or I like Megan's IEP thought, because you're on an IEP, you can't ever read, you can't ever fill in the blank, or do we just need to give you different tools to?
Students might be coming from an education environment where they didn't feel those three things. And, you know, I think sometimes it's surprising to them when they see that they can feel those things, or it's not something that they're thinking of for themselves to ever feel that way in an education setting.
I think a lot of that too, like they don't stick to something long enough. So if you can talk them into doing some productive struggle, all of a sudden they start to go, oh, that's why you made me stick to it. That's why you weren't helping me right there. But they don't understand right away. And that's why scaffolding is so important, because they don't understand why you're not giving the assistance instantly, but they have to build the skill.
It's a real balancing act, and it's probably the thing that I question the most about my instruction sometimes. It takes planning and careful planning and knowing your students uh, to be able to meet their self-determination needs.
And what things you can skip on the way and what things you just can't.
Right. And when is it productive struggle and when does that segue into frustration?
So to give everybody a chance to talk and to discuss a few things, I dropped two documents in here. And if you GED people, you're going to go into a small group with a small group of GED people. ESL will be in small groups of ESL. Your instructions are on the form for what I'd like you to do in your breakout groups. Over the next approximately 20 minutes, I want you to focus on the students' scenario, the student scenario. Focus on the student scenario there, and then if you have time, or if you're totally going to rebel, because I know some of you will and don't want to do what my scenario is, and that's fine. Then and I was like, well, I'd rather talk about my student. You go ahead and do that, and then we'll do a share out in the end and talk about like maybe the mini checklists, a checklist of some of the mini successes that you could build in or that you are building in or things you're using. And it's a good time for you guys just to share amongst each other, because you are professionals and the majority have a wealth of experience in this. So it's always nice to get something new from your counterparts across the state. So Nikita is putting together our rooms.
They're
And
ready to go.
Kim, did you say you dropped documents in the
are you
chat?
not seeing them?
No.
Well, maybe if I actually hit the button,
Ah.
voila, give you a minute to download them, or a second. Probably don't need a whole minute. So has everybody got a hold of them now? I'm glad you asked, because you had to hit the blue button. All right. Nikita's going to move you into your rooms now.
I think I've got everybody in the right split between GED or ESL, but if you're in a group that looks odd, we can get you moved over to a different one.
Just come on out. Welcome back. Well, alphabetically, we got to start with an ESL group. I'd like to have a share back from would one of the groups volunteer to talk about what they discussed?
Well, group 6. Okay, I'll go with group 6. With the scenario part, we were talking about if she's scared of answering, it's probably because of maybe possible bigger group. We were talking about her putting in smaller groups first, pair up, and get that comfort level of if she knows the answer, she's more comfortable with one person to express her opinion and say what she thinks the answer is. And if it's wrong, it's just the one person and then work up to at one point up to the bigger group where she'll get more confidence to answer the question. Kind of a relationship type thing if she's scared of talking with more students around her.
How about another ESL group?
I can add to that. We same, and then in addition, we talked about in case it's a competence issue, having sentence frames and pre-teaching some of the vocabulary words she might need to use to respond, to make sure she also has the competence she needs to respond, and then maybe not be scared that her answer is wrong.
Nikita, we had one more ESL group, correct?
Yes.
How about that third group? Anything to add?
I'm from that third group. We said much of what's already been said, but Starlin pointed out something about how she could feel safer in an online class. Like, Starlin, correct me if I'm wrong, people could put their answers in the chat just to the teacher first, rather than having to share with the whole group. And then there was one other thing, which I don't remember. And now I'm putting you on the spot. Or not, if you don't remember, that's okay. I don't either.
I don't either.
It was good, whatever it was.
Starlin's used to me putting her on the spot all the time. Sorry. Okay, how about a GED group?
Okay. So our scenario was Alex is studying for the math GED. After failing a practice quiz on fractions for the second time, he shuts his book and says, "It's no use. I've just never been a math person. My brain just doesn't work that way. I'm going to fail just like I did in high school." So we talked about how we could give him some confidence, and then what we could do, within 15 minutes to get him back on track. So we talked about figuring out what he is interested in and how we can tie fractions to that. If he's interested in music, we could tie that back to whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, eighth notes, 16th notes, and even put up just a measure and let him see how one whole breaks down into different pieces and how the denominator works differently, and then talk about common denominators and things like that, just so he can get a picture of how fractions work, or sockets, or baking, or whatever, try to find a common interest of his. And then we talked about, let me look, words, writing steps down, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 in words. So he had something to follow. I guess that's kind of the gist of it, and how it's so important to let him see those little successes. The aha, great, you did it, and celebrating every little bitty thing that he does to help him persist.
How about one of the other groups? Thank you, Jennifer.
Our group kind of started in the if time allows box because Rachel has a student who's doing this right now. So I want Rachel to talk about her student and some of the things we talked about to maybe give them ideas.
Oh boy, thanks, Becky. I think really just having that open conversation, right? A lot of times I talk with students about their self-doubt, reframing the thoughts that go through their head. I think that's a huge part of it. Really thinking about cognitive load is really important. I do it a lot with my ESL students. If we can do regular subtraction and addition, we first start out with fractions that are super simple, right? They have the same common denominator, and we can add those. And then we add 2 with 2 different common denominators. And then we go to 3, right? And we add them, and then it's that same process for subtraction. No, thank you. No, thank you. Oh. And then really thinking about all of the different ways that we can just build that cognitive load to kind of stair step them, and really just pointing out like the wins. Like, remember when you told me you couldn't pass your writing test and then all of a sudden magically it happened? What happened there? What did you do? And their answer wasn't one I really wanted. And so I was like, well, we don't want you to do that, but here, let's find another way to find some self-motivation, right? Because you are intelligent. Otherwise, you would not have passed your other tests, because we know statistics show us 60% of what only 60% of high school students can pass the GED. So obviously you're pretty intelligent if you've been able to pass so far. So really just kind of pointing out where they've seen successes before is important, I think, as well.
Bees get diplomas, but they don't get GEDs.
That's right.
Other scenarios you guys had, or aha moments, or just things you shared?
Our group, this is Megan. Our group, I was interested, I suppose, to know. I'm not sure if I thought I was the only one who ever did this, but I always tell people how much of a person I am not. Like, I'm not a math person. I am an English major, not a math person. And when I started teaching math, I used to be afraid of math too. But I didn't realize that everyone in my group was telling the same story to their students, just to kind of have like, no, we're all in on this, and kind of trying to dispel that notion of there is no such thing as a math person exactly. But golly, look how you can come to this in all these different ways and feel more confident with practice. So I thought that was kind of interesting that everyone was telling that story with different flavors. And then one thing that we did kind of touch on that I thought was interesting is perhaps they might have self-efficacy in one area of their life, like weightlifting or sports, that they have practiced and increased their capabilities over time, that they're not really seeing academics as something that builds in that way, but maybe using a different part of their lives where they do feel some ownership and efficacy to say like, nope, this is exactly the same. And I thought that that was an interesting idea.
I bet I could recite Becky's story that she tells every single student who tells her she's smart and she couldn't possibly know what it's like to do math. And then she talks about the fact of her crying at her table at her house with her dad doing math in school. And they're like, really? So, yeah.
And it's true. It's not made up, right? It's true. But yeah, and I think Steph's comment that not every skill is an innate talent, right? Everybody has those talents, the things that they're just naturally good at, but that doesn't mean you're incapable of learning how to do something else. I am never going to be a basketball player, but if I wanted to practice dribbling a basketball for long enough, I could get pretty good at it.
It's funny you say that, Becky, because that's exactly the analogy I tell my students when they say they're not good at reading. I say if I wanted to be a good basketball player, I could go out and I could practice every day and I'd get those skills. And it might be harder for me than it would be for someone else, but I'd still be able to do it.
I often feel like this goes back to just like adult learners having this massive amount of anxiety with when it comes to learning, right? They feel that they're behind the times. There's so many, they're in their 30s or their 40s, and they're just like, oh, I should have had this already. I don't feel smart enough. And they're so willing to give up. But I think just even reframing, the thought process or just even their thinking, I think helps a lot, especially students because a lot of our students just struggled in school. That's why they quit. A lot of them have neurodivergent tendencies, right? And so they're always up in their head. How can I help them to reframe those thoughts? And I literally just say, yeah, that's not, what if we said this instead? What if we said, you know what, it's hard, but I think I can try. I can try, and I bet I can do it because I am smart.
It's also nice when you can use examples of your own adult learning. I talk about myself either learning languages and some of the mistakes I've made. I'm learning how to sew now, and I talk about things that I've sewn that look great and things that absolutely don't. I don't have pictorial evidence of the things that don't look good, but that might be something I add. So, Teacher Kate's not perfect at everything. She sucks at sewing zippers, but I can learn and I can practice.
Well, in doing so, and I've heard so much great dialogue. I think about our adult ed sphere of lifelong learning. and that you are the models of that, and that all of your students are coming with various preconceived notions of education, whether that's from a refugee camp, whether that's from a well-to-do post-Soviet environment, more heavy literacy, or trauma, and just a whole host of generational trauma or generational poverty, etc. And so I thought I would just harken back to the teaching skills that matter. And in looking at those, the 9 skills, when you're talking about, I just think of all of those metacognitive exercises you're taking your adult learners, right? Let's stop, let's reframe, let's think about our thinking. Let's focus less on how well we're doing and what we're doing and how far you've come, and look at the skills as this problem solving, etc. So kudos to you.
I think that's what, and I always think this is really important to think about too. When you're challenging yourself to really learn something new. I mean, when I was trying to learn how to build web pages beyond the simple stuff, like I know there's a way to make this do this. And after a while I'd be thinking, I'm like, oh my God, my head is so hot. It's like, think about how stimulated we are from that, and forgetting that some of our students, from the time goodness, they choose to walk in our door and feel that overstimulation for a long every day. Good for them. I don't know if you told me I had to do web design every single day and learn something new about it every single day, that I could keep doing it. So I think it's great that they walk in the door every day knowing that a lot of their minds are going to be that hot by the time they leave. So, hey, I want to point out Stephanie's math boot camp wall. She sent that to me right before this, and I'm like, that's awesome. It's exactly the same thing. Nothing new, just a new way to look at it. So our session next month will be on the first part of the instructor-related factors. Vocabulary, not near as confusing. I thought the session went fairly quickly, but I learned a lot about it. One of the tips I would say is, if you have a document open and you put your snipping tool up on your computer, you can snip the pictures of those things. So if you're one that's typing it all out, maybe that's the best way you learn, and that's great. But if you can look pictorially at it, a lot of times I just snipped the picture of that part and threw it into my document to look at later. So, and then I threw the whole document into ANI and let my, or AI, not ANI, AI, and told it to make me a synopsis of it. And then I corrected the synopsis. So something I worked on last month, because I am going to conquer AI. It is going to be my private secretary no matter what. All right. Any other thoughts, questions, suggestions, things to share? The study guide is on the South Dakota All website, so you can find that there. The study circle questions for worksheets are on there for this week. Probably the week, a day or so before, like Tuesday or Wednesday before, I'll throw up if we decide to do a breakout. I'm not sure what we're going to do yet. If we do a breakout and we're going to do a scenario, I'll make sure you can download it ahead of time. So it would be up on the South Dakota All website. So southdakotaall.org/MAL.
Kim,
Yes.
Unit 2 student-related factors, we're talking about on April 16th, right?
Yes.
Okay, I
Sorry.
just wanted to make sure you have the right
got the wrong date.
words and then the wrong date. I just wanted to make sure we really are meeting in April, right? April 16th
Yes.
to talk about student-related factors. Okay,
Thank you for catching that. This is
No
what happens when I tried to prep 3 in a row.
No problem. I just want to make sure I didn't miss something.
So yes, April. Geez, I wrote April off already.
Don't make it go that fast.
No, I know. I already wrote March off. Well, nothing else for the group. Hope everyone enjoys their Easter holiday and have a good week. Rest of your week.
Happy spring, everyone. Thank you.